Welcome back to the Go-Tanium show. I have a special treat for you. Have you ever got that tap on the shoulder from your boss that says, hey, the software audit is here and I need these numbers by the end of the day? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to take me days or weeks to get these numbers because we've got these pockets of all these different data points we're trying to pull together. And this is just a classic Tanium value story of how we can really help with those software audits. And we've got some new capabilities that's already out right now that you can take advantage of. And I want to have our expert today, Roland, who's going to tell us all about that. Roland, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Roland Diaz. I am the asset lead SME here at Tanium. Been here about 4 years.
4 years, 4 years together, actually. Roland and
Yes.
I were in New Hire together back in the day. That was a lot of fun. Now, Roland, you've made your appearance very proper today. You've pulled your hair back. Well, I want to see the ponytail, man. Yeah. All right, got the ink on there. So you said you've got some special plans this weekend?
Yep, actually, I got 4 friends of mine and I were hopping on our motorcycles, big Harleys, and we're riding down to New Orleans from here in Long Island, New York.
So how many hours is that in the saddle?
The first couple of days, we're going to do about 700 miles a day. We plan to be in New Orleans Monday, and we're going to be there for a few days. So we're probably going to be riding for the first few days, about 12 to 16 hours a day.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
fun. Just wait to see the country if you've never done it.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So anyway, we're here to talk about software audits. That's
Yes.
a big pain point. Outside of being saddle sore, this is probably a little bigger pain point for a lot of our people who are riding in the saddle every day in IT, and your boss pings you on the shoulder, hey, I need those software numbers. So tell us, you're the assets me. Why don't you
Yes.
give us before we get into SIU, just a quick overview for those who may not be familiar with the asset module.
Sure. So Asset was originally put together in Tanium because we needed the ability to get information from both online and offline assets, right? And we wanted the ability to shape that data properly so we can send it to your CMDB, whether that's a Flexera or a ServiceNow, whether you're using our push integration or the pull integration with them. And that's really was kind of the primary use cases with Tanium Asset until we recently came out with our new SIU feature that allows us to not only tell you what applications were installed on your endpoints, but are they actually being used and by how much and by whom?
Okay, and what does SIU stand for?
Software inventory and usage.
There we go. Straightforward. Software
Yep.
inventory and usage. Now, some people might be wondering, we've already got TDS, the Tanium Data Service. We've talked about that in previous shows, allows us to cache results for offline. And I know this is a softball for you, but tell us, why would we use Asset if we already have TDS?
Well, there's a couple of limitations with TDS. They don't collect quite as much data as we do. They're also limited to 30 days. With Asset out of the box, if you're in TAS, you have 180-day storage. That is configurable. If you're an on-prem customer, you can go as low as 7 days. You can go infinite if you choose to. And a lot of customers, especially in the Fed space, tend to like to do that because they want to know what their endpoints look like over time. So if you have an endpoint that dropped off your radar 60 days ago, within TDS, you're not going to be able to see it. The other ability that we have is that TDS will not interact with your CMDBs. There's no built-in interface with that. So it's not like they can come in and get the same data. We shape it intentionally because Asset was built specifically to be the source of truth for those CMDBs.
So the point there is, if you do not own the asset module in your environment today, you can get installed applications in Tanium and ask that question. But what Asset's going to do is it's going to clean up that data, normalize it, and give you a path to make it useful in some of those external third-party systems that you might have for tracking software today. So there's a lot of value in the module, not to mention this killer solution here for the software audit. So Roland, tell us about SIU, software inventory and usage.
So SIU was designed using Software Manager. It's something that's already within Tanium that's being used by both patch and deploy. And what we did was we take a look at the installed applications on every endpoint that are Windows or Mac. And we also take a look at the executed processes. So if you have portable applications, if you have traditionally not normally installed applications, we can detect that usage. We then pull out the vendor, the version information, We normalize it on the endpoint. We store all of that usage data on the endpoint from the minute SIU is installed. And then what ends up happening is we report that information back to Asset, and then we give the users the ability to then choose which applications in their catalog that they want to start tracking usage for reporting purposes. We're already tracking from the install, but we don't actually do reporting until you enable that.
So let's drill down on a couple of things you said there. First off, I want to point out you said Windows and Mac. So
Yes.
let's talk about the platform support.
Yeah, so Asset out of the box supports all the traditional platforms that we have. So it's Windows, Linux, Mac, AIX, and Solaris, right? For SIU, what we focused on initially were really the client sides instead of just the servers. So what we started with was Windows and Mac systems. We already have Linux in development that will be coming out probably in phase 3 of SIU sometime later this year. But for now, right now, we focused mostly on the Windows and the Mac stuff because of the software audits. I mean, realistically, most people know what they have on their servers. What they don't know is what people have on their endpoints, their workstations, and things that they're using every day in their environments.
So you mentioned that there's this SIU thing installed on the endpoint. Is there anything I have to do to make that happen as an admin? Or I should just back up for a second. How do we get SIU? Let's start there.
Well, if you're in TAS, you already have it. It's already out there. It's already collecting data. If you're not on TAS, if you're an on-prem customer, you would need to upgrade to 1.17. That's the latest release of Asset. Once that goes out, I'm assuming that you have the default setup of the Asset Action Group. Once that happens, the tools will start getting deployed out to all of your endpoints for, especially the Windows and the Mac ones, and it will start automatically recording. So as an admin, you don't really have to do anything other than just let it go out there in your environment and start collecting data.
So why don't we take a look at it? We've talked about it now. Let's jump in the console.
Sure. So let me share my screen. So really the new thing here within Asset is the software inventory and usage. So once endpoints start collecting that data, we pull everything into all products. And in here is everything that I'm currently recording, and we do sort by default by the things that we're actually recording right now. I can also come in here and take a look at vendors. So let's say I want to take a look. Let's say the boss came in and said, hey, I need to understand Quest Toad for Oracle is a very expensive application. So I'm going to look for Toad. So here's Quest software. If I drill down into that, I can see Toad for Oracle. I can see that I have 44 installations, some that are pending usage, and then I got some used and unused. I can drill down even further into that. I can get a list of all of the endpoints, when the last use date was on those endpoints, and I can even sit down and take a look at some of the usage buckets. So in here, I can see I have usage not detected. High means that this is a power user of it. Limited means there's very limited functionality, and I can even see what's not installed.
So not installed is 33 there, right? Yep. Okay, so that's an important thing as well. Sometimes I know in our conversation before the show, you said in the past we couldn't really know all the machines where something's not installed, right? That negative targeting. So here we can actually see where it's not installed. So why is that important?
Well, let's say you're going through a software compliance. Let's say there's a requirement, there's an audit coming down that you need to have a piece of software, an antivirus software, right? That you can go in and you need to know that it's there. You can, with SIU and with the sensors that we make available to you within Interact, you do have the ability to ask the question to the endpoints, and they will tell you whether they have that software installed on it or not.
So Roland, take us back to that all products view, because I noticed the pause button down the right side, and I just want to make sure that this is clear for everyone. You said this is a sorted, I noticed it's sorted by default. There's a sort arrow at the top of the column.
Yes.
And if we scroll down, what are we going to see? Okay, so there's a play button. All right. So that I want to just make this clear for our audience. What's the difference between the play and the pause?
So the play button is how we turn on reporting for the tracking. So by default, when you install Asset, tracking is enabled, but the reporting for the tracking is not enabled. So as an admin, I would come in, take a look at my vendors, take a look at the software packages that are installed on my endpoints, and then make a determination on those things that I want to start making available for executive reports. So whether that would be Quest Toad or whether that would be Adobe Photoshop, you would come in here and you would hit the play button. Once you turn that on, what happens is we send a command down to the endpoints, and they start reporting usage information back into Asset.
So we already have the data. It's just a matter of whether or not we're reporting on it. Okay.
Correct.
Good. So out of the box, once somebody, they do their, if they're an on-prem customer, they upgrade their asset module. They want to come in here, make sure that they've enabled not tracking, but reporting on the ones that are important to them.
Exactly.
All right. So let's break that down a little bit. The boss just tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, we need numbers for this app. Oh no, it's not been enabled for reporting. So what happens then? How long is it going to take before I can have some meaningful numbers?
It depends on how long ago you installed Asset. So if you've upgraded to 117, let's say a month ago, you have a month worth of data collected already, and you can simply come in here, click play. Within about an hour after the next inventory cycle that we run on the endpoints, you'll start getting that usage data back so that you can start to see what the usage buckets are, when it was first used, when it was last used, how often it's been used. So it doesn't take more than maybe about an hour or so for you to get relevant information.
And that's just crazy talk, right? I mean, in the industry,
oh yeah,
what kind of tool? Even if if we're on a slow day, it's going to take us an hour to get this information, right? If it's not already set up. So that's just phenomenal. I used to have a customer that talked about Tanium time as like bullet time. You know, all their other products take days and weeks, but Tanium is just, we think an hour slow in Tanium terms, but everybody else is, oh, that's fast. So yeah, we're good shape there.
Yes. Now you can get the information faster if you wanted to. You can simply go into Interact. There are several sensors that we make available to you. So you don't have to necessarily enable tracking here to get that. Let's say you have that quick dive that you need to do. You can go into Interact and you can ask a question of the endpoints and look for a specific software title and its usage.
That's a good segue. Why don't we pivot over to Interact and take a look at some of those new sensors?
Sure. So in here, I can come in to build a question, only because it's easier to show the sensors. With browse all, and if you just filter by SIU, what you can see in here is there is SIU installed products, first use, last use, usage, users, and whether or not SIU is supported or not. So if I want to get usage information on something like, let's say, Adobe Photoshop, I can come in here. I can click on last used. For the vendor name, I do Adobe. For the application name, Photoshop. And ask the question. Now this is going to ask the question of every single endpoint. So you're going to get a whole lot of nothing, but within here, I can sit down and see all of the endpoints where, you know, it's not available for Linux or no results would be typically like Solaris machines. And in here, I can see the usage dates that are coming back. I can do the same thing for usage buckets.
Okay, let's drill into the usage buckets. That's a different sensor. That's the usage instead of last used, right?
Yep.
Because I want to point that out so that people can see the level of granularity that we offer. We've intentionally not made it like every second of usage here. We've bucketed it for a reason, because really we're just trying to answer the question, has this been used lately? And the answer is yes. So let's see what level of precision. So explain these other parameters to us here.
Right. So basically, because we don't want you to wildcard and ask questions of every single application that's running on an endpoint, we require that you put in the exact vendor name and the exact name of the application. And then days back is basically how long do I want to report that average usage bucket for? And then baseline period is how long do I want that application to have existed on the endpoint before I start reporting usage back. Right. Okay. So once I do that and I hit apply, I can now ask the question. So within here, what we see is our general buckets. So 1 through 59 would fall into that limited category that we had seen earlier. 60 through 239 would be the normal range. 240 plus per day means it's a high utilization. You can also see not installed. So there's 32 endpoints that we are tracking where this application is not installed at all. Now this can be a mix of Windows and Linux endpoints. I didn't add a filter in here to just say Windows only. It also could be servers. I mean, right now, Photoshop is only installed on workstations, so it's not, generally going to be found on a server environment.
So earlier you said that we're targeting workstations primarily. It works on servers.
Yes, it works on servers. It works on workstations. It really doesn't make a difference in the Windows world. So we track everything. But what I had said earlier is that from a usage perspective, really most customers are worried about what's running on their endpoints. So, or their workstations. But yes, we're tracking usage on servers and workstations in the Windows world.
So this is a high dollar application. So we can go at the limited usage or no usage numbers here and say, okay, we can go approach those users and say, do you really need this? If we're cinching up the budget belt, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. So I can come in here and I can do a quick filter drill down, and I can get down to the names of the machines that have this application on that are limited usage. I can pull this information. I can do the same thing to get the primary user with the computer name and then notify them and say, hey, we have an issue here. The other reason why we built these sensors is for interoperability with applications like Deploy. So I could sit down and say, here's a very expensive software. We were talking about Toad Oracle earlier. I could go in and then use this usage sensor to sit down and say, I want to target machines that have Toad for Oracle installed on it. And now I want to remove it if it's either never been used or if it's in a limited usage case, if it's in a limited usage where they're not really using it enough to justify the expense of that application on that endpoint. And then Deploy would automatically uninstall it from the endpoint and clean up your inventory.
So as far as reporting, so going back to our original question, manager taps me on the shoulder, end of the day, I need these numbers. I would probably produce that report then. So this is the interactive view in Interact. So it'd probably be better to pull that directly out of Asset, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's take one final glance before we wrap up here. We're just about out of time. Let's go back to Asset and just take one more glance at that usage report. So in here, I don't know, did we talk about the built-in reports yet?
So the standard built-in reports are just install products, SIU last use and product usage. So, but really for the targeting perspective, in here, if I want to take a look at in Acrobat Pro where there was no usage, I can quickly pull up a report and see this is a list of the machines. So I can get the computer name, operating system, who the user is, the name of the application, and the fact that usage was not detected. So what this is telling me is that Adobe Photoshop is installed on that endpoint, but no one's ever used it.
That's huge.
So this
is huge.
So that was one of the challenges that Tanium always had was it was difficult for us to do negative reporting. Customers came to us and said, hey, I know the application's on there, but how do I know if it's never been used? And our legacy product that we used to have, which was app usage content, couldn't do the negative targeting. We intentionally built this to be able to do that negative targeting to say, we know that the application's on there and we know the user has never used it.
All right, let's do the inverse. Let's show the usage report then.
Sure. So if I come in here into product usage, this is going to give me every application. So the same thing, if I filter by Toad, I can see all the different usage buckets for Toad. So now this is only for software that we've enabled tracked reporting for.
Okay.
So once I have that in here, I'm going to start getting this information as well. So within here, I can see that I have usage not detected, 3 endpoints that have Toad installed on it, that it's not being used at all, much like we saw earlier in the Photoshop one. I can also see the endpoints where it's not installed. I can drill down into these and I can get a list of, if this was a compliance issue where I was looking for that software to be installed, I can get a list of all of the machines here that are Windows-based that I don't have this software installed on. And now I can export this, give it to my team and say, hey, you need to install this software on these endpoints in order for us to meet our compliance regulation.
And there's the Mac right beside the Windows.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's wrap up then and just talk about the last point here. So you said that this is really essential for feeding some of those third-party applications, that enterprise applications that are going to track software licensing and usage. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Sure. So right now, ServiceNow, Flexera are the 2 big competitors in the field. They don't have the ability to track usage information. They're relying on Tanium And I'm working with at least one of them right now to start getting that usage information from them, or to them, I should say, so that we can then start reporting on usage so that they can start using their workflows to trigger the uninstalls of and the reclamation of that software. So within the environment right now, very few, if any, we're really the only ones in the industry that are doing this, to be honest with you. I mean, most other people have tried, their swag at it hasn't really been good at all. But because of how we function with client extensions, we get that information down to the endpoints, down to the users, so that they can make intelligent decisions.
That's a big claim. And Tanium makes a lot of big claims. And I mean, just from the start, right? We do things in real time with visibility and control, and nobody else in the industry can do that. And this is just another example. And pardon me if I sound salesy, I'm an engineer and I just love this company. That's why I came to Tanium, so that we can do use cases like this that just blow everybody's mind. That's great.
I totally agree. I mean, when I became the asset lead SME, SIU was being built, and I spent close to 20 years on the operations side of the world. And for me, this was the most important information that I needed to have for when my boss did come in 5 o'clock on a Friday and say, I need to know who, because we got to true up our licenses on Toad on Monday. I need to know who's got it, who's using it. I couldn't get in the answer by Monday if my life depended on it. With Asset, with Tanium, with SIU, it's literally the few clicks of a mouse, build a quick report, and within an hour, you have that information that you can then take action on. You know who has the software and who's using it.
Wow. That sounds like a really good wrap up. Anything else you want to make sure we emphasize before we close here?
Not really. I mean, it's the Tanium is definitely the art of the possible, and this is our first pass at it. There is more feature sets that are coming in the very near future for SIU.
Yeah, you mentioned Linux is coming soon. So as always with Tanium, we're constantly making things better. Roland, thank you for giving us this tour of software inventory and usage today. And it's in your console right now. If you're in TAS, if you're on-prem, just go upgrade the module and you've got it. It's another great value story that we're just continuing to enhance what you've already got there in the console. And for those of you who are in the saddle every day in IT, I hope that this really does save your bacon over and over again when it comes time to those real quick requests that you get from management. Now, I do have a couple bullets here just to wrap things up. So, software inventory and usage takeaways, SIU, you'll hear us call it for short. So, this is available today for your Windows and Mac for software stats. This is amazing. So you get things like first used, last used, and those daily averages of how many minutes they've been using it over a reporting period that you specify. Also, remember that the tracking is always on, but you have to enable the reporting. So you have to go into Asset, find the list, and then make sure you hit the play button by those apps that are important to you. And with this, you can nail your software audits. Yes. And we can solve the panic, right? Now, as usual, we always have a short link for you here. You'll notice bit.ly/Tanium Asset SIU. That is case sensitive. That's going to take you to a community post. Surprise, you knew that was coming. A community post over at Tanium, community.tanium.com. And in that article, the PM, Tom, is going to walk you through all of this detail that Roland covered and a few other tips. And at the bottom of that is a link to kb.tanium.com. Remember my big three: docs, community, KB. KB is going to give you the specific release notes that you'll want to include in your change control potentially for why you're making this change. And as always, you can interact with me and Roland in the community forum. So bit.ly/Go-Tanium discussions there. Hit that link if you'd like to ask questions or offer us feedback. We're always interested to know what you think about the product and how we can make it better. So thank you again for joining us for this episode of Go-Tanium Tech Talks. And until next time, Go-Tanium.